Hey there, welcome to episode 89 of the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. I am your host, Managing Director of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, Dan Hugo. We are recording this at it's about 10 minutes to 1 p.m. on Tuesday, October 29th. You can hear it already. The wind that has passed through Vegas has kicked up all of my favorite particulates. It's having a solid effect on my allergies. Kind of nuts, but anyway, we'll see if we can soldier through with today's episode about Fediverse. What is it? What's it all about? You've heard about it, maybe, perhaps. Nope, not the Metaverse, but we'll get to that. Before we get started, I'll remind you, or for those first listening, this is your first time, got some catching up to do. The Innovate for Vegas Foundation is a Nevada nonprofit. It is a 501c3 public charity. Our purpose is to enable and encourage ideation, innovation, and implementation to make our communities better. That sounds sort of vague by design. It doesn't say coding. Nothing in there about coding. It's a civic volunteer organization designed, or conceived perhaps, from the origin story of Code for Vegas. That's a different story told many times so far. To enable and encourage all those things, ideation, innovation, implementation, but to begin from the ground, as I like to say, from the people around you, around me, who would like to not talk about what somebody else should do, but actually be a part of what I call closing gaps, solving problems, elevating communities. So civic volunteerism, it's a noble pursuit. The pay is very bad, but the outcomes, they're pretty good if you get over that pay part. Anyway, episode 89, Fediverse. Hopefully wherever you found this episode, you have found the episode description, which includes some show notes and some links for today's episode. I'll read the show note summary, and we'll get on with it. You may or may not be aware of the Fediverse. Unlike the Metaverse, this is actually a real thing. And in fact, we could argue it's been around in one way or another the whole time, surely for decades. Surely a component of your virtual Vegas vision, ours, making our smart city smarter, should include something intersecting the Fediverse. How about this week? That was an adventure in reading a monologue. The links for today's episode. Let's begin with the usual. Our innovateforvegas.org organization homepage for the Innovate for Vegas Foundation recently moved, hosted as static content for the moment at GitHub, as a GitHub page. Literally last night got started on initial integration of our initiatives into, so rather than having a little paragraph for each of our initiatives on the homepage, break our homepage up into more manageable and more easily consumed chunks, parcels of useful information, so that you're not hit with a wall of text visiting the page. A little bit more mobile friendly. It's mobile friendly now, but then it becomes just huge as the one page. So integrating information and status about our various initiatives, wrapping that up into sort of an automated page creation scheme, which will free up some online space for sandbox projects, that is deploying things that are in progress and so on. So part of a larger vision, still always a work in progress. What is not a work in progress, especially here in Vegas? Think of it as like road construction, but for civic volunteerism. Innovateforvegas.org, FOR spelled out, Innovate for Vegas. Project ACT, projectact.info. ACT is our autonomous cohort tessellation project. It started out as an autonomous cohort transformation to enable groups of people, civic volunteers in the making, to transform from, say, a Code for America brigade into an autonomous, independent, free-thinking cohort pursuing local-centric community elevation projects. What a mouthful. Project-ACT, ACT.info is one of the pages, one of the sites. The .info version It also exists as a GitHub static GitHub page. There's right now a very, 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 very simplistic page. There's a lot of things to sort of connect and hook together to make everything nice and functional versus nice and beautiful, which will hopefully follow soon after. But you'll get the basic idea. Projectact.info will aim to be an information resource about the autonomous cohort transformation, and more interesting perhaps given the state of the world, the tessellation, which is like a mosaic, which you can imagine as a presentation, a mosaic of different projects and different initiatives and different cohorts and different individuals who are a part of the mosaic of civic volunteerism, of community elevation, of doing interesting things at scale, collaborating across borders, etc., etc. Projectact.info. Agileforvolunteers.org, also very simple at the moment. It will be the sort of destination landing page for our Agile for Volunteers initiative, which aims to enable volunteers to collaborate in real and useful ways on initiatives and component projects using the original Agile manifesto as a starting point, not the Agile industrial complex, which if you ever hear someone complain about Agile and how much they do not care for it, they are almost certainly being forced to use some abomination based on initial Agile methods and principles. We are adapting Agile not only for volunteers, so people who are not showing up in an office to collaborate for pay, 48 plus hours a week, but also for non-coders, non-technical collaboration. So always a work in progress there as well. All of our internal initiative development will eventually find its way onto the public-facing agileforvolunteers.org website for others to try and use and contribute to and iterate on, think about. Joinmastodon.org. That is join, Join, Mastodon, Mastodon, Mastodon. Joinmastodon.org is sort of the starting point, the tip of the iceberg of the Mastodon component of the Fediverse. Mastodon is probably the best known if there is any sort of normal person knowledge of the Fediverse. It's like Twitter. As luck would have it, when Elon Musk purchased Twitter, there was a little bit of chaos in the air, and Mastodon, which had been around for quite some time, kind of had light shone upon it. So between Blue Sky, which uses its own the AT protocol to communicate, between Blue Sky, Mastodon, which uses ActivityPub, which is open, and Twitter, and then some other Twitter-like platforms that are much more similar to like a closed silo scheme. You must join a particular branded platform, Twitter, Truth Social, Parler was one for a while, etc. I think there were several. So you can follow the same old model of joining a platform, getting in on the beta. Whereas Mastodon being decentralized in the Fediverse, you can create your own server, or you can join an existing server. So the Innovate for Vegas Foundation has an account on the Fostodon Mastodon server. We have a link to it at the top of our homepage, innovateforvegas.org, if you are curious. Don't post there much. Don't have much of a following. Haven't spent a lot of time on social media engagement. To-do list too big. But we could and will have our own instance, our own server for Mastodon here in Vegas, which we will maintain, and that's why we're doing this episode today, to talk about it. You can follow our instance. We can follow your instance. You can follow from Threads. You can follow from another Mastodon instance. You can also follow from other ActivityPub platforms. This is going to be something that is initially, I don't know about confusing, but it's just a new, kind of an old way actually. But it's not in keeping with the membership required, members only, if you will, notion that has been sort of foisted upon us with the social media takeover of the world. So Mastodon, we'll talk about that more. ActivityPub, rocks. ActivityPub.rocks. Pub as in publish. ActivityPub makes use of activity streams, which you probably don't want to read, which is sort of a specification on how to publish structured data as a live stream, as a activity stream, things that are happening, things that are going on. It could be news, announcements, a book review, whatever it is. Makes use of structured data so you can actually not only read it as a human, but you could integrate it in with other things, other ideas, other applications by parsing structured data as published using ActivityPub to decentralized servers in the Fediverse. Ooh, that's a lot of stuff. So ActivityPub will figure into several things: activity streams, ActivityPub. I've linked to them here for your information. ActivityPub will link to activity streams if you are really curious, but it's more of a specification. ActivityPub is also a specification, but it's something you can actually make use of through Mastodon or other tools. And of course, all open source. Finally, as I am speaking at this very moment and correcting a typo, it's not up yet. The goal is this week to launch an initial beta, if you will. Get Mastodon.Vegas up and running. Mastodon, Mastodon .Vegas, the .Vegas domain. It's a whole entire domain dedicated to our oasis in the desert. So Mastodon.Vegas will be kind of managed by the Innovate for Vegas Foundation. There will be there won't be advertising like there is on most commercial social media platforms. Probably going to take the well, first of all, there obviously no charge. It's a free deployment. However, it will ideally drive some supportive donations to our organization to help defray the cost of operating it. So it will be free to use, free to sign up. Precise policies on who should be using it. Clearly compliance with COPPA, Child Online Privacy Protection Act, and other related legal constraints as far as age requirements and so on. Limitations on hate speech and so on. All the normal stuff will apply, but it will not be. There will be no check marks. In fact, you verify yourself with your own online presence. That's something new for some people. The goal is to have a Fediverse presence for our Smarter Smart City. And here's where we will begin. And it is only the beginning of the beginning if we can, in fact, get this launched this week. So today is October 29th. So in a perfect world, November 1st or before, we should have Mastodon.Vegas at least running. Whether we open the floodgates or not, it will almost certainly be on a low-powered deployment, hardware and resources. So getting 40 million people to sign up in a weekend would be a bit much, but we'll see. 40 million being the number of visitors reported by the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority to the Greater Vegas area each year, for the last 2 years at least. And population of Southern Nevada, something around 2.4 million, give or take. Even that seems like a big number. So maybe we'll start out with 2, 5, we'll see. Those are the links. And again, Mastodon.Vegas on October 29, as I'm recording this. I think it's parked. Let me see where it's parked. I think it's parked at GoDaddy or something. Don't mind the clicking. Yeah, it's parked at GoDaddy, a landing page. But that will change this week. So, in fact, next week's episode, if all goes well, could be, since it will be election day, we'll talk about something other than that. So hopefully we'll talk about getting our Mastodon instance up and running and some other developments along those lines. So let's get this episode started. It will never finish if it never starts. And in fact, let us start with why. So the Fediverse, as it has come to be known lately, is a decentralized collection of services connected via the internets, intended to enable outcomes that can interoperate without limiting the paths to reach them. So for example, you can sign up at any number of Mastodon servers if you want to participate in conversations. You can even start your own, which we will be doing, and it will work with all the other ones. So you can follow your friend on Mastodon social, mastodon.online. Like I said, we're on Fosstodon. I also have a personal account on Fosstodon, free and open source software, FOSS. So Fosstodon, Medium, the publishing platform, launched their own Fediverse Mastodon instance. So there's a me.dm, I think it is. So I'm on there. So yeah, you can create now. You don't have to say, oh, I have my Twitter account. You don't even have to create fake different. You can just literally use the same account name if you want everywhere, but on different. So I partition my uses depending on which platform it is. So if it's going to be software, talking about nerdy stuff, Fosstodon, anything political or news of the day, I swing over to Medium. So stuff like that. Those are personal choices. You can do whatever you want. In a greater Vegas area, if we intend to follow through with any notion that it is a so-called smart city, and if making our smart city smarter continues to be one of our overarching or capstone initiatives for the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, which it is, following through with the introduction of a well-known social media platform like Mastodon, aimed at local connection, is one step in that direction. I love when I don't finish a thought in my notes. How to freewheel that one. In the bigger picture, a decentralized collection of paths into the future seems to make more sense than continuing to reinvent silos. And a destination such as Las Vegas seems to be an interesting place to try these ideas out, not only for people visiting our oasis in the desert, but for anyone who would like to interoperate with Vegas. So in other words, we have that population of 2.3 million, so we can be very Vegas-centric. Mastodon.Vegas would clearly not be the place to go to learn more about Manhattan or Toronto. They should have their own instances of servers that are now not run by the city. They're not. The Mastodon.Vegas is not going to begin its life by being a city service. It will be run by our nonprofit, but the leaning will be towards Vegas-centric information sharing. Does that mean you must be in Vegas, you must be this tall to use Mastodon? No, not quite. But again, this will not be about people that want to post their marketing materials, fake ads as posts. Not fake ads, but I mean, we'll just be posting advertisements for our own. Hey, come and visit Florida, whatever. You do that on your Florida Mastodon server. The exact direction, though, has not really been set. If I'm a benevolent dictator, perhaps, but really, ideally, something like this, which would be managed by our nonprofit, should be taking direction from the people of the greater Vegas area. Seems to make sense. So rather than farming out connection with our locality to the likes of Meta with Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, etc., we can actually have a decentralized but easily found, and I'm not going to say publicly owned, but a platform that takes direction from its local users. So that's how the idea begins anyway. So if we have this in the stream, in the Fediverse, but if we have it in our thinking as a starting point for the greater Vegas area, that will ideally indeed be a starting point into more use of modern technologies and decentralized connectivity to make our smart city not only smarter, but easier to interact with, interoperate with, perhaps be aware of, and so on. So what is Mastodon anyway? You may have heard about it as, it's like Twitter. On the surface, the Mastodon platform does look like Twitter. Looks like a Twitter clone. Some might believe a Twitter replacement, which would be, it's very rare that open source software tries to replace something else. It may replace something else, but that's not really the goal usually. It's usually to provide an alternative for people who don't want to use a commercial version or want to experiment with, like, we can start with something that looks kind of like Twitter, but we can try out some new ideas, which some Twitter-inspired ideas have made their way. So some Mastodon servers support very long posts. Some support invite-only policies to join, and so on. So a few different ways of experimenting with some things, which is, I believe, the way the internet should be. One quick look will confirm this initial suspicion, though, because it does look a lot like Twitter, with similar notions of following. They used to call it toots, but you can boost a post, which is essentially resharing it. You can like posts, there's a little star, and so on. So kind of Twittery, right? The intent is a microblogging social media platform, but one that you can own yourself or connect to from other places. So each of you and your friends could have your own Mastodon server running for whatever reason, and then you could follow each other across your servers, and everything works as intended. One of the first things one will find is that anyone can sign up for any of a variety of Mastodon servers. And in fact, I think if you go to the Join Mastodon site, I haven't done this in a while, go to the Join Mastodon, which is, obviously, I closed it. Join Mastodon, joinmastodon.org. So we can pick another server. So right on the homepage, there's a button that says pick another server. And you can look around for servers that match your interest. So let's look at, I haven't looked at this in a long time. So let's look at regional, see if anybody else has a Las Vegas. I'm seeing a lot of European, San Francisco Bay Area, Australia, Scotland, Glasgow, Singapore, Irish. I'm not seeing Vegas. Okay. Well, so we'll probably be on there soon. So if you're looking for any particular server, you can join as many as you like. There's no limit. There's no particular requirement. Again, somebody might require an invitation. This helps to keep the amount of trolling and other bad behaviors down if you are invited in. But then that's how vampires work, right? So you never know. But it is, at first glance, it looks a lot like Twitter, and that is a familiar starting point. So that's a nice way to onboard people into a new piece of software or a new way of doing things, is to make use of the things they already know. So not so bad. If you look at Threads, which is an Instagram adjacent social media tool that Meta launched. So if you're using Instagram, you create your Threads presence. You automatically have all of your Instagram followers are your potential Threads followers if they sign up for Threads. So kind of an interesting hook. And Threads will allegedly implement the ActivityPub engagement protocol. So you'll be able to interoperate with other ActivityPub platforms. Unfortunately, they've taken an AOL approach, really, from what I can tell. I have a Threads account that I've used it maybe once. It doesn't fully implement the notion of following and responding and interacting, so it's not like a first-class participant in the Fediverse. So we'll see what they come up with. It might be a way to introduce people, because Vegas has a very strong content creator, influencer population, a lot of Instagram use. So if people there are using Threads, it would be an interesting way to bridge using ActivityPub with our Mastodon.Vegas instance, and then see where people find it useful, people that may find a more open approach useful, that don't like the open. Well, we'll see. We'll find out. To properly represent the possibilities, one would be able to follow. So I'm giving an example using what people are probably familiar with. Be able to follow a Facebook account from a Twitter account, or interact with a Reddit account through an Instagram account. The notion of sharing a link from one to the other has existed for some time now. So I can certainly message someone a photo on Instagram. I can't really easily follow, or the Instagram kind of broke some of the basic fundamentals of links and link sharing and whatnot. I can share a link to my tweet on Twitter to a Facebook timeline. I can share an article from a website, so that thanks to the Open Graph protocol, they'll pull the description, the title, an image, and an official URL from the header of an HTML page. So these are all things that have been around for a while, but they're really about not being able to interoperate. So it's a kind of a one-way kind of it's like having a business card, right? Everybody expects the business card to have a name and an email and address and a phone number and the name of a business and something like your title. That's about it. They can look different, but they have that basic information. Throw a QR code on the back or on the front even. now you've opened up all kinds of possibilities for encoding actual information or links, computer readable links to a richer online presence and so on. So yeah, merely sharing a link with another service, the other service has to visit the link, pull down this basic information, and then you can say it's not dysfunctional, but it's not great. Facebook, unfortunately, disabled a lot of the cool things that may have arisen from Open Graph. In my opinion, I think there could have been some interesting things there. So they've really cut down on the amount of Open Graph interaction, whereas schema.org, and it's a fairly nerdy site, so if you don't already know about schema.org, you're probably not going to try to visit it anyway. But schema.org defines a lot of different data types, like an event, which Open Graph also did, but Facebook didn't implement or removed. So now if I want to tell you when an event is happening, you can include date, time, venue, description, etc. in the content, and your computer, the server, can read that data directly and insert it into a calendar or do other things, in addition to informing you, the human, where are we going? So some cool possibilities, and I think Facebook or Meta now kind of backpedaled, either specifically or for business reasons, who knows, specifically as in we don't want to go down this path for whatever reason, or maybe they felt that being an open platform was not ideal, or whatever the case. Open Graph, I think, could have been more interesting than it ended up being. However, ActivityPub to the rescue, maybe. So you can't really follow a Twitter account from Facebook. You can link to the Twitter account in your posts, in your timeline or your newsfeed or whatever they call it now, but you can't follow. So you have to go and sign up and have a Twitter account and so on. In the Fediverse, the federated universe, federated identity, federated platforms and so on, they can all interoperate, but they can be separate. So now, if you are using a Facebook-like platform that is Fediverse compliant and you're using a Mastodon instance or server, you can follow someone on the Facebook equivalent from your Mastodon account, and they will exchange information through ActivityPub that could be activity stream objects, and you can display them accordingly or interact with them accordingly. So it frees up the notion of a vertical silo platform features and makes exposing these to other platforms and thus interaction between people using them sort of par for the course. So similarities, strictly speaking, following a Facebook user or page from your Twitter account today doesn't really work. Now without some interposer tools or methods, like you may have a if this then that or Zapier or other automation tools that will watch for a post and it will repost to Twitter or something. You can connect things sort of wonky like that. So you can ship data between the two systems or multiple systems. You can comment on a Facebook post as a Twitter user if you have a Facebook account, right? So you can't really interoperate without having this commonality of platform. Threads is attempting to move in this direction with following between Threads users by non-Threads users through ActivityPub. And when it's not quite fully implemented, as I mentioned, so maybe it's caution, business concerns. I think they're trying to couch it as a privacy concern, but it is Instagram. So if you have 40 million followers or whatever some of these insane numbers are, then you're publishing what you're publishing. Your privacy may or may not be the thing you're looking for. You're looking for a reach. So I don't know exactly what their motivation is to be so cautious or slow as they have been, but Threads still in the we'll see mode, I guess. So I have read various accounts that, it's coming, full ActivityPub compliance and compatibility really on the horizon. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But Threads is one of the higher profile kind of mainstream adopters. I think Reddit was going to integrate ActivityPub, and there was another one. I know Flipboard has, but Threads, as part of Instagram, if Threads does indeed integrate more completely with the Fediverse, with a more complete implementation of ActivityPub for engagement, interaction, and so on, that would be something. And by the way, if we imagine the Fediverse as being closer to email, like it's not this crazy idea, closer to email. where anyone can email anyone else, regardless of your email address. You have some idea how it works. So email interoperability has been a tricky yet essential part of the internet for decades. And you still have an email address, right? So still going. Some people hate email, but it works. Email interoperability has been a tricky yet essential, yet ongoing, to amend that statement. So it's always going. It's always being. It's always a concern that email is interoperable, even when you look at sending HTML email, which is itself something of a nightmare. But making that work, making full use of multi-part internet mail extensions, MIME types, these are all steps along a path that probably could have been easier with some schema.org thinking. And I'm saying schema.org is a repository. Schema.org is essentially RDF data expressed as JSON LD, etc. But either way, if you can literally send rich data in a text email with the right wrappers and lines of demarcation between sections and so on, email would probably be a little bit easier to deal with today, but it is what it is. There are a lot of different people that made sure that their stuff kind of works with everybody else's stuff, which means this ubiquity means that you can send someone an email. You do not have to have a Gmail address to send someone an email on their Gmail address to their Gmail address. So interoperation between platforms and services through standard mail transfer protocol and MIME type, MIME structured emails and so on makes for possibilities that would not be allowed or even possible even if you had to literally go and sign up at every service that you wanted to interact with. And you see this with, we have a WhatsApp group. That means I have to sign up with WhatsApp, and WhatsApp I don't have a WhatsApp account anymore, but do I have to use my phone number? So then you start spreading your personal information around to sign up for these services like Signal and Telegram and WhatsApp. And I do have Signal and Telegram and a Matrix account, but not all of them require phone numbers. But in general, the more things you have to sign up for, the more things you have to deal with and manage and worry about vulnerabilities and data compromises and so on. So if you must interoperate with people through signing up with additional or becoming an account holder in more and more platforms, then we are pushing the problem to the user. And there's really no need for that. It is the 21st century. So if we look at a few other possibilities, Internet Relay Chat has been around for forever. I have an IRC window open right now. Do I? Wait. No, I closed it. I do. I've made use of IRC sometimes. I think most people don't use IRC that I communicate with on a regular basis. But for the people who do use IRC, you can create your own IRC server and interoperate with anyone else. The Twit TV network had an IRC server forever. I don't know if they still do, but you could IRC chat with Leo and the gang. It's kind of interesting. An interesting idea that could very easily make a comeback. Network News and NTP implemented as Usenet News in the early 80s, I think 1983, for broad-reaching information sharing. And you could even share photos thanks to UU encoding and then later MIME encoding. In news groups, so you could join a news group and you could share words and even photos, binary attachments. It would spread it across multiple messages if it was too big and so on. So decentralized information sharing. Does that sound familiar? Since the 80s. And that was just the public version. There was all sorts of chat and sharing. That's why the internet was formed, for sharing information between different locations. So not going through one location. SMS, short message service, MMS, multimedia message service, and now whatever other chaos exists for messaging between classic phone numbers. So if I have your phone number, I can send you a text message of some sort, and it might have a blue or a green bubble or who knows. So now that now I have your phone number, so now I can text you whenever you want, whatever I want. Now you have to block me if you don't want my text. So it's an archaic system. It was a way to make some money for the phone companies to use the unused bandwidth for sending short message service text. Arguably the inspiration for Twitter. It's had its day, I think SMS could go away. Probably, arguably, has in favor of MMS and its modern takes. But either way, these have been around for a while. Point-to-point messaging, later group messaging with MMS, and now it's just a way to contact people in yet another. Oh, I changed my phone number. Well, now you're going to have to tell everybody where your new text messages need to go. Personal profiles, maybe your tilde directory on your college computer. So tilde username. Back in the day, in the early days of the internets, was where you could be found. I was, did we use tilde? I think we used tildes on when Netscape allowed everybody to publish a profile on the Netscape servers. So yeah, the good old days. But personal profiles have been around forever in one way or another. Started with the plan file. If you could edit a text file, you could create your .plan, be all set. It's more, maybe you have a personal or business domain that you own. I've had reallycool.com for my own business uses since 1996. And so I've had control. I've had the same email address since 1996 to Hugo, reallycool.com. You at least could control these if you own them, right? So by having a Gmail address, I certainly have a Gmail address, but Google can disable my Gmail address whenever they want. And that's happened. So it's always a little dodgy to hand over more and more to third parties who don't know you. More recently, a presence on big social media platforms are controlled and monetized by others is where people are found. So you'll see people say, oh, I'm on Twitter. Find me on Instagram. Follow me on YouTube. And these are tricky because at any time you can be removed. Now, this is not something that every single person is always staying awake at night. But if the platform goes down, if they change to a subscription model, so now you have to start paying, like, oh, I didn't plan on paying for a TikTok account. That's not right. So things can always change. Terms of service can always be adjusted. Maybe one country doesn't want your service in their country because it's from another country, right? So there could be geopolitical ramifications. There are more places that have data breach problems. Here's a fun fact. I'm interjecting. I'm calling it audible, not the company. You know how everybody wants to use a secure socket layer, now TLS, which is transport layer security, I think. Got to have SSL so nobody steals your credit card. So the implication being that someone would watch your internet traffic and try to catch a credit card number or other private information. Now, if you're using public Wi-Fi networks, this is sort of a problem because you can watch all of the traffic. If you're not encrypting it, if you're not using a VPN, right? I'm not plugging VPNs because most of them are junk. But if you don't encrypt your traffic, yeah, it's possible that it could be intercepted and used. However, back when I was working on smart cards, ISO 7816 smart cards for the win, nowadays it's a chip card or a card with a chip in it. Back when we were in the early days, before those were really adopted, Visa in Foster City, right up the street from Los Gatos, where we were working at SCM Microsystems, every once in a while, someone would just steal a laptop that had 1 million credit card numbers on it, like user account information that was for some reason stored on a laptop that was not locked up in a vault. So the take home, if you hand over your personal profile to a big business, or if you hand over your credit card information or whatever, you are not necessarily a target for crime. But when everything is all in one place, it's very easy to walk in the door and grab a laptop that has everything on it. And now your information got compromised again. At this point, your social security is in the world. It's not private anymore, so don't worry about it. Possibilities, though. The new ideas that took over the internets 20 years ago, they look a lot like what they look like today. And they're still here. So Facebook, back when it started, this is going to be, it's still the same thing. It got worse, but it's really, it's posting things to your so-called friends and followers and starting little battles and trolling and fake this and that and so on. They're shiny versions of old ideas, which I kind of went through a couple of them. Slack is IRC. That's one of my favorites. Like this big, expensive business or product that got bought by Salesforce is literally internet relay chat with some beautification with some polish applied, but not a brilliant. And we can strap on some artificial intelligence and agents and bots and stuff. But okay, so these took over 20 plus years ago. They're less interoperable now and all about profit and monetizing personal information and your behavior. So a so-called smart city, certainly a smarter smart city, could consider open and people-centric rather than closed and profit-centric when it comes to technology connecting them and the parts of the smart city. If you want to read a horror story, when a for-profit entity like Google comes and visits your city, like Toronto, with something so tamely named the Sidewalk Project, and says, we're going to make your city smart. And the people of Toronto said, no, thank you. And their idea was, oh, well, just follow everyone, figure out where you go and when you spend money and what you're doing. And no, thank you. So when it's profit-centric, they want to know what you're buying, what you're doing, where you're walking, so they can take that and turn it into marketing and advertising and a package of pedestrian travel and user experience in a city and stuff, and sell that, make money on it. So closed and profit-centric, there's always a profit motive. I'm not trying to be conspiratorial. I'm simply saying when you use a service today and you say, how come I can't? Well, the upsides of ActivityPub are the interoperability and, thanks to the activity stream infrastructure it makes use of, structured data passing between services. So now a Reddit user could follow a Twitter user, except it might be because there are open source, sort of similar tools. Lemmy, Lemmy, a Lemmy user and a Mastodon user, so that's kind of like Twitter, could follow each other. And those are platforms, not necessarily the names of companies that control your participation. So we could also launch a Lemmy server that would be very much like Reddit, and anyone using any ActivityPub client, so you don't have to use Mastodon.Vegas, you can use any you want, which is another fun thing. Oh, how come I can't join Mastodon.Vegas? Well, you can join any, you can launch your own. There's really no keeping people off, right? As long as you participate in a reasonable human way, it's unlikely that you will be shunned and canceled and all that. Maybe you have a Mastodon server for people in Vegas. Well, I don't live in Vegas. Okay, well, why don't you join a server that's aimed at you and then your interests or your locality. And again, if you go to that join server on Join Mastodon, if you click that button, you can find servers based on region, interest, particular specific interests and stuff. The upside of this flexibility, you don't have to worry about, well, I got booted off Twitter, I guess I'm done. Nope, that doesn't exist anymore. So where am I? So you have more control over your participation, more choice, certainly. So once different tools can interoperate, we can connect locals and visitors here in the greater Vegas area without requiring one to sign up for a particular commercial platform, without requiring one to add yet another messaging or social media application to your mobile device, and so on. So you could follow a thing, a person, a business, an event on Mastodon.Vegas because the event is Vegas. The person lives in Vegas. The business operates in Vegas. But you don't have to be in Vegas. You don't even have to be associated with the Mastodon.Vegas server. You could follow, you could interact with, you could comment on from anywhere, from any server. You could have your own server. You could live in New York or San Francisco or Chicago or anywhere. I'm totally randomly coming up with names. So you could be in Lancaster, Virginia. Is that a city? I think it is. You could be anywhere and use any server that you choose to participate in or your own and follow and interact with Mastodon.Vegas and vice versa. So once they can interoperate, you don't have to add all this new stuff. You don't have to sign up for more things. You can, but you are not required to join Mastodon.Vegas to interoperate with Mastodon.Vegas. And while it's not quite this easy, I'm going to simplify it here, but there's a little bit of work to do. That's what we're doing. A smarter smart city can lean into different elements of virtual and real Vegas, for example, connecting and communicating with people and other entities, so they could be people or services or robots or who knows, in ways that we may not even have in mind today. So most people think of Twitter as a place to share memes or to troll people or whatever is going on over there. I don't really use Twitter anymore. I used to use Twitter a lot for talking about food trucks, for taking foodie pics and talking about food truck events and resharing upcoming food truck events and so on. So, there are different ways to use these things. Nowadays, you could do something very similar, but you wouldn't have to all be on Twitter. And, but it's all in one place. That's good and bad, right? So it's the discoverability that becomes tricky. And that is another thing I've talked about many times. So if we can start with Mastodon in Vegas, which we'll get to right now in the bigger picture, it's an established brand. So everybody, quote unquote, everybody knows what Mastodon is. So expectations are what they are as a starting point. If you like, it's an open source effort. So it's a brand, but not like Mastodon.Vegas is not violating their brand. It's actually, hopefully, will provide yet more awareness. It's an open source effort that has driven a lot of early adoption of the Fediverse, and at a time when the big monolithic platforms may be falling out of favor a little tiny bit. Starting out with an established name and platform that we can deploy locally enables that first familiar testing of the waters by those who know, followed by those who want to know. So if we were to implement our own thing with ActivityPub, which is what that figures into our other projects. But if we start out with a known quantity in a deployable open source application platform that people can just start using, then we can begin the introduction of novel thinking with familiar thinking, at least a little bit familiar. Oh, it kind of looks like Twitter. Oh, it's this other thing that people, and it works with threads. And I can dip my toe in this water and see what happens. So our My Muni and Welcome initiatives are about a human interface for our smart city, smarter smart city perhaps, which obviously needs to deal with the old ways, right? If you want to talk about news, like a news article, that's the classic website with Open Graph data for simple-minded sharing. The intent there is to give people a minimal summary of what an article is about and send them over there to read it and so on. Okay, that's all well and good, but I should be able to follow that information anywhere, right? I should be able to get local news. I have a list on Twitter that I don't maintain, but I think it's a local news list, and it's Twitter handles of Vegas local news outlets and reporters and so on. I haven't updated it in ages, but I get new follower notifications all the time. Not all the time, but more than zero. More than I would have thought. That just seems weird to me. The news, or like every time a reporter or an online personality creates a social media account, technically the company owns that account. And then you'll see a news reporter will post personal, photographs about a vacation or whatnot. And that's all well and good. They're human. But then things get murky if the person leaves or changes to a different television station or news outlet or business. Or, well, what do I do with my social media account? What do I do with my online presence and all the posts and the followers and all that? So you could literally have the news channel, the Las Vegas Sun, our local paper of record, one of them, could have a Mastodon server, for example, and all of their staff could have accounts there. And then if the staff leaves, they can say, oh, okay, I don't work here anymore. And the account could remain, and they don't have to worry about, your content for the paper, you're taking it to your competitor. You just tell people I moved. Here's I'm at a different company and whatever. You can have your own account. Like, there's really no reason now to bicker over names of accounts and who owns what and who gets to use what and sign up for what and so on. So the notion of enabling connection and communication without worrying about ownership and proprietary and so on. I'm not saying you don't get to own your content. That's actually quite the opposite. You have the opportunity to own your own content. And if you have an employer, they can own your content to the extent that you're using their platform. But you hear horror stories about, my employer wanted me to hand over my social media account. And this does happen. And so for some people, that's all they have. So making use of Fediverse tools should work, and it should work well. And if we can get people started with something like a Mastodon server in Vegas, that's Vegas focused, at least Vegas centric, Then we can start rolling out other activity-based Fediverse tools. We could roll out something like Pixel Pub, which is like Instagram. And I use the word like because, as is so often the case, the inspiration is initially, oh, we can do something like Instagram in the Fediverse native. So starting out with that in mind rather than a threads model, which is like, oh, maybe we'll kind of do it halfway. So Pixel Pub is like Instagram. Lemmy is like Reddit. Loops is like TikTok, sort of, or Reels, really. Loops is intended, it's by the same person who wrote Pixel Pub. It is intended to enable you to duet and other the features. Is it duet? What do you call it when you? I'm totally spacing on the name. So you can co-create after the fact. Anyway, so these features, when you have a functioning platform that is starting out as a familiar, that's kind of like fill in the blank. From there, you can start experimenting with new ideas and new features and whatnot, starting from that familiar initial entry. And then your favorite Fediverse tools should also work with these things. So whether it's a Pixel Pub or a Mastodon server or a Lemmy server or something totally new, you should be able to interoperate. Except for threads. They're only halfway. And as we've pointed out so many times, and as we will continue to, one does not need to be in Vegas to innovate for Vegas, with most of what we are pursuing along these paths applicable to any locality. One reason we open participation in our initiatives by those from other, from beyond the greater Vegas area, is to begin with the notion that these ideas could be a part of any smart city, and anyone anywhere should be a part of that if they want to. Vegas has a lot of visitors, and that's an opportunity to engage people in interesting ways. Ultimately, we don't want to build a Vegas platform. We want to build any more platform. We're in the last section, I promise. So civic volunteerism for the win. What does that even mean? Sorry, I use Obsidian to keep track of my show notes, my bullet items, my lists of things I want to talk about. And for some reason, the last bullet item of the last section always has a weird indentation unless I do what I just did, which is basically scroll to the thing and tap key. And anyway, Obsidian is not open source software. That's the problem. So closed commercial platforms with profit motives are arguably a headache we have all been enjoying for a very long time. And I use the word enjoying, ironically. If our own city governments and agencies and others who need to reach a local population must do so through Twitter or Facebook or Instagram because there is no other way, well, that is just not very 21st century. And it's certainly not smart city. We're a smart city except that we cannot talk to people without Instagram. If your local government cannot reach its population without commercial enablers in between, maybe something is wrong. Now, I'm not saying the government has to own. You don't have to completely nationalize a Twitter platform, but that would be a federal government doing it. But what you could do is not have a closed, for-profit, privately held company raking in millions and billions of dollars of data, dollars based on collecting and analyzing and selling your personal data and advertising. Like the economy of that has been around for a while. We all know how well it works and what it does to people. And yeah, we can do it different. We can be different. We can be better. If your local government cannot reach its population though, without relying on these third parties, I think something is wrong. Now, your city probably has a website. The city of Las Vegas has multiple websites. I don't even know where to begin to point to them or find them. It's a kind of a crazy mess. But one of the problems, if I may, is that you cannot follow a city website. You must follow the City of Las Vegas Twitter account or Instagram account. And while those are fun, air quotes, why do I have to sign? Now, Twitter and Instagram for sure, and Facebook forever, has long been like this. You really can't view content on those platforms if you are not signed in. You have to get an account, you have to log in, because they really want to know who's looking at their stuff. So you get a reduced level of experience, of interaction. So if I'm not signed into Instagram, I may not be able to look at more than a couple of pictures. If I'm not signed into Twitter, I might be able to see the tweet that I was, I had a link to that I clicked on. Okay, but then you must sign in to see anything else. And these are broken. And in fact, a city government cannot operate by requiring people to sign up or sign in or take these actions when, what if I'm viewing the city website from a computer, a library computer? In order to find out, you have to use Instagram, which you have to sign in. Well, I'm not using what is that? That doesn't work. So in our model, open source tools, open protocols like ActivityPub and ActivityStream and so on, and participation by actual people who are a part of the local population become a part of overall community elevation, which includes information awareness, knowing what is happening, where and when. So it could be news, or it could be like event news, which is sort of a not so pressing. What is coming up in the future and so on. And you can make use of modern tools like maps and timelines. If I'm going to tell people where the Formula One race track and construction and footbridges and other impact zones of where things will be affected negatively, I shouldn't have to keep writing articles. There should be a resource that I can get updates to my Mastodon, like, I'm following the F1 racetrack, and it's going to tell me when there's a street closure, or I'm going to follow my favorite bus route, and it's going to tell me when there's a detour, because there's all kinds of opportunities and possibilities that we don't get to explore if everything has to use Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. And this is a smarter city that we're looking at here, right? So we should not be thinking backwards and paying billionaires money when we could be enabling the people that live here, the people who live here, to try out new ideas to make a smarter, smart city. It's not going to make itself. So people who might live in your neighborhood, who might live in your house or your home, could be a part of that elevation. So elevating a community could be people literally. See, nobody at Twitter is coming to Vegas thinking, well, it'd be cool if there was a tunnel that had Teslas in it. And okay, that's what they're thinking. But otherwise, nobody's really thinking here, coming to Vegas and thinking, how could we help the people who live in Las Vegas be more aware of habitat encroachment or traffic issues with road race, intersection donuts, or whatever they call them now. Like, how do we maintain some level of awareness of what's happening with so much attention paid to the Strip, a lot paid to the downtown Vegas area, some to the Summerlin, Henderson. So there are different spots of where there's a little bit more awareness, but just generally speaking, how do we figure out what's going on in a place like this? Twitter doesn't really care. Not really, nor does Facebook. Most companies that are about getting customers care about getting more customers. They don't necessarily care about a customer. So that becomes a little bit tricky. That was an for pause because I totally lost my place. So not only through coding, by the way, so that your neighbors, your friends, your people in your family, you yourself could participate, not just through coding, but through participation in any number of ways, not the least of which is helping to define where we should go. What should we do? What do we need to do? What is nobody doing? What is everybody complaining about or upset by or not getting? Man, I wish somebody would do this. Like, well, why don't you be a part of doing it? I'm not a coder. Even better. Obviously, as part of a cultivation of our culture of innovation. Now, note, innovation does not mean technology. It often does lately, but you can be innovative in any number of ways. So cultivation of our culture of innovation in the greater Vegas area and in any locality anywhere, including more people in their own locality integrating human interaction with modern technology, where the overarching goal is not to ship profits to somewhere else. That is, any monies here made by people here go to Twitter headquarters, wherever that is now, right? Involve more people locally, involve more innovation locally. But to actually elevate the communities locally, we invite the people who are a part of the present to be a part of the future in the Fediverse and here on the ground. And that is why Mastodon.Vegas will launch, with fingers crossed, sometime this week. The two major, I guess, to-do list items. So we already have the domain and all that. Figuring out how the Mastodon infrastructure works. I've done that a little bit. I kind of see how it all functions. Blindly launching something and not knowing how it works, especially because it is open source and you can look and see how it works. It's not a really brilliant idea, but we can launch it as a testing sort of trial. Let's see how this works, and we can make some mistakes without going full public. And the second thing is the infrastructure selection, whether we should start with AWS or whether we should look at Google Compute Cloud or Google Compute Platform. Probably, I think GCP, is it Google Compute Platform? I think they have a credit scheme that might be useful. AWS is more stingy with giving out credits for nonprofits, probably for charities, but they may have a startup program that we can look at. So we'll have to see what's available. What I don't want is for our nonprofit public charity to get deluged with a usage bill each month that exceeds our total. Well, we haven't really made any money in donations recently. I think our total donations for last fiscal year were $30, $35 from people out in the world. So if we construct this platform and nobody is interested in providing some support for our organization to offset our costs to this, then that would be a very short-lived effort. So we'll see. We're entering into this in a sort of an experimental mode, but it is indeed a part of the larger picture of making our smart city smarter, not depending on third-party proprietary systems, but enabling civic volunteers of any interest area, coding or not. Doesn't have to be code. In fact, better if it isn't. To engage and interoperate, and most of all, to ideate, innovate, and implement to make our communities better. There you go. Don't forget to check those links out. And I will remind you again, Fediverse with a Mastodon.Vegas as a part of it is coming soon. But if you happen to click on it and you reach a GoDaddy parked landing page, just come back tomorrow. Come back the next day. But yeah, we're looking to get it up and running this week. And we'll see what happens. Thank you so much for listening as always. And don't forget, if you want to support our public charity, we are, and I'm not a tax professional nor giving you legal advice, but we are a tax exempt organization. You can look us up in the IRS exempt organization database. I think it's like EOM, which I don't know what the M stands for, but you can look us up, Innovate for Vegas Foundation. We're legit. We file our 990s and everything. We're all good. So if you would like to be supportive, and again, Mastodon.Vegas will not be a pay service. There's no paying for a subscription to sign up and so on. However, we will strongly encourage people to support our nonprofit. There you go. Thanks for listening as always. Take it easy.